Welcome committee members, liaisons, and members of the public to the Legal Services Trust Fund Executive Committee meeting. Thank you for joining us. We are using Zoom with a goal to foster a more inclusive environment and effective meeting. If you would like to comment during the meeting, please use the raise hand feature. Please utilize this tool to virtually indicate that you would like to speak in order to help the chair facilitate the meeting. A friendly reminder that this is a video conference meeting, and please be aware of the surroundings behind you. All Legal Services Trust Fund Commission meetings and committee meetings will be recorded and posted to the State Bar's website. Zoom captioning is available. To enable, select live transcript at the bottom of your Zoom screen, then select enable transcript. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Why don't we do roll call and then we'll go to public comment.
Connolly?
Here.
Al-Sarraf?
Here.
2 present, 0 absent. We have quorum. I saw Selena. Is Melanie, Laura?
I am here. And
Okay,
Laura
great.
is here as
Okay,
well.
great.
Yep.
Great. Okay, and then we have Chris as well. Okay, so Erica, everyone's here. Turn it back over to you.
Great. Is there any member of the public that would like to make public comment? Just as a heads up, we limit to 3 minutes.
There's no one indicating they want to speak.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move forward then. Let's go ahead into the approval of the minutes. They looked good to me. I mean, did you have any issues with the minutes?
No changes. I'll move to approve.
Okay, I'll second.
I'll do roll call. Al-Sarraf?
Yes.
Connolly?
Yes.
2 yes, 0 no's. Motion passes.
Great, thank you. All right, let's move into our discussion and action items. So the update on the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission strategic planning process, and I think that's Dwan.
Yeah, sure. And Erica already knows this because she's part of the working group. So, I mean, we are pretty far along. That working group has met several times. We've gone over, so as you'll recall, we contracted with the consultants to do 15 in-depth interviews, and they grouped them. So it's actually more than that. Some of the groupings were like 4 to 5 different programs, like say in Northern California or LA region. So there were actually a number of programs that got to be interviewed, which was great. And then because we couldn't interview 110 programs, we then sent out a survey to all the grantees, and we had a really high response rate. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. I would want to say 60 or 70%. It was pretty high volume. They reported back to us because it was anonymous, kind of in like if there are themes, and everything was pretty much, there weren't anything anything that was surprising to, I would say, the group. Everything was pretty much in line with things that the commission had discussed, such as like wanting to like bolster data collection, wanting the commission to kind of take on more to kind of provide support and technical assistance, and then think about like where that we can collaborate with other funders and state agencies, really kind of think about what the commission could do with the admin funds to kind of maximize impact. So again, nothing too radical. Everything was really consistent with what the commission has been discussing. A couple of things that were raised a few times. I don't know like how extensively it was, but it was reported to us. Like programs do want to see more streamlined reporting, less reporting, and more support, I think is kind of the gist of it. So at the next meeting, I mean, that working group, we're finalizing what the strategic plan is going to look like and laying out kind of a little bit more details for all of the 5 strategies. And then the staff right now is working on, I would say, more of a loose implementation plan. Like we're kind of outlining what we can do to kind of achieve those goals. And then my suggestion to the commission is that we should revisit that document every year. So instead of having like, we're not gonna have strategic planning next year, but we use maybe that first meeting of the year and don't really have business items. We kind of get together in person, and then we think about like, really like, are we meeting what we're setting out to meet, and do we want to modify anything or add anything? I think it's a good time for planning purposes. So we're taking a first, I would say, stab at it. with some of the initiatives that we've already kind of launched, some of the projects we're doing, and then we would love the commission to fill it in. But I think maybe this year it won't be kind of like the very detailed, just because we want to get and then next year at the planning will be the very, like, I think that should be like where we reset what we want the implementation plan to kind of be. So we're actually really far along. We are still aiming to present everything at the June commission meeting, and have it approved, and then it'll go into effect. I don't know if you have any questions, but
No, that's exciting. That's great. No questions off the top. So June will be when we are presented with the strategic plan.
Yep.
Which means that we'll have another, 6 months of kind of the rest of the year to, when we get to the beginning of next year, kind of assess where we are.
Yeah. And there are things that we want to like the working group will be recommending to kind of do effective immediately is like start like an infrastructure a kind of committee to deal with some of these things. And then, the mission statement, you all saw there's a draft already. So that was like the first priority. So assuming the commission agrees with that, we will have that approved as a package. And then it'll be like, how do we want to share it out to like external stakeholders, to programs and stuff like that. And then it's really like about us like staying true to it, right? Like really when we think about like a new grant funding or a new opportunity or an issue that comes up, like, that can be like our guiding star kind of a thing.
I think it's great. I'm excited about it. I'm glad that we've gotten as much feedback as we've gotten from the external stakeholders, because that's I think huge as well.
People want to really engage, and the one thing we heard from the consultants is like a lot of the programs were very appreciative that they had like a mechanism to provide like the feedback, even the ones that weren't like selected for the interview, but like that we had this like survey to do. So it was, it's good.
No, it's great. Thank you, and thanks to everybody else who's been involved in this process, because I think this is going to be a great roadmap for us as a commission. And I guess we'll jump to it at the end when we talk about the agenda. But I'm
because that's one thing. Like how much time should we allot?
Yeah.
But Erica, do you want to add anything because you're on the working group?
No, I think you've covered everything. I mean, I think I will just underscore, Dwan's point about kind of having like an infrastructure committee, because I think some of in order to kind of fill in some of those details, I think there's going to be some like restructuring that we're going to need to do. And I do think the latter half of the year is a good time to kind of work on that, especially as we transition, if people are rolling off the commission and like, if there's different leadership, that's a good time to kind of implement some of that as like sort of a new year for us. But no, I think it's really exciting. The consultants have done a great job, and like so much appreciation to the staff, working with them, Dwan, and, for spearheading this, and Elizabeth, you guys have done just such a great job with the commission, and we really are really grateful that you came up with this idea and like are moving it forward. So, and many thanks also to, our liaisons and the feedback that they've provided as well. So I think it's going to be really, really like super exciting.
Yeah, and I'm like excited to see how the commission, like, because I think we'll probably have that meeting will be in June, will be robust around this, so it'll see how it all kind of plays out, what people's thoughts. And like we had in our office we had a on Wednesday like a brainstorming session around the implementation, and so I already got a lot of feedback, and then I sent it to the whole staff. Right. And then I gave them a deadline next week to give me more feedback, and then I'll distill it and then send it back out to the working group, Erica, as a starting point, and you all can kind of take it and modify as you see fit.
That's great. Really appreciate you guys, working so hard on this and giving us such great ideas, and also listening to like the commission's feedback. I think what the consultants Cassandra and her team have done is really taken the things that we kind of already thought through in January and like turn them into kind of action items. So I hope this won't be too, contentious, because I think it's really executing on stuff that we had talked about. But yeah, I'm sure there will be, which is good, like robust discussion on how we sort of move forward on all this stuff.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we don't have to be in agreement
exciting.
everything, but I think what I'm glad to hear that like the community as a whole seems to like want to engage, and again a lot of very similar themes. So again, we're not like far off base or anything, so it's good.
That's great. Okay. Any other updates on this one?
Mm-mm.
I mean, any other questions or anything you want to talk about this?
Oh, no,
Okay.
thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the update. Why don't we move to our grant reallocations for CalHFA, which I believe is Chris. Are you up?
Sorry, I was a little
No,
lag
you're
with my
fine.
unmuting, and you might hear my cat meowing in the background. If he hops up on the desk, I apologize. Let me share my
Oh,
screen.
hold on.
Well, good afternoon. I will be able to deliver. Let me know if you can't see my slides, but I think I can deliver this one somewhat quickly. It's a pretty straightforward small number of reallocations that staff is proposing to the executive committee. So I'm going to jump into it. Just as I have like just one slide, maybe two on background, just as a quick refresher. As the executive committee may recall, the California Housing Finance Agency Foreclosure Prevention Grants, of which there are 11, fund legal services to prevent, these are federal funds, to prevent homeowner mortgage delinquencies, defaults, foreclosures, loss of utilities or home energy services, and displacements of homeowners experiencing financial hardship. These are funds that were part of the American Rescue Plan Act, so they were pandemic relief funds. This committee originally had delegated authority from the full commission to make the awards. It made 11 grants for a total of a little over $11 million. And that was back around mid-June of 2022. And this grant period is for 3 years. So that's kind of just like the refresher there. One of the 11 grantees volunteered to relinquish $216,594. That was during the first year of its 3-year grant period. That was public counsel. There was a couple of reasons that they did that. It was not something the commission required of them or staff required, but they volunteered to do it. At the time, staff recommended that the commission, that the executive committee, and that CalHRC actually wait to reallocate those funds until a little further into the 3-year grant period, in case anyone else also wanted to volunteer to relinquish funds down the road. Seemed a little too early to do a reallocation only a few months into the 3-year period, so we waited. Since then, State Bar staff has identified an additional $200,000 that is available to reallocate. That brings the total to $416,594. And that additional $200,000 is actually not from current awards. They are funds that State Bar staff has to administer the CalHFA grants, and that State Bar staff anticipates it will not need. And so rather than sit on those sort of administrative funds until the end of the 3-year grant period and simply have them go unspent, staff checked in with CalHRC, the California California Housing Finance Agency Homeowner Relief Corporation, and got their sort of support for reallocating some of those staff administrative funds. So that's why the total is $416,594. That's actually something that staff analyzed since last reporting to this committee. So that number is kind of new. We've known about the $216,594 from public counsel for a while. On March 29th of this year, the full commission delegated authority to this committee to reallocate any CalHFA grant funds that were currently available or that became available later. So this committee has authority to approve a reallocation, which is what staff will ask it to do today. In April and early May, State Bar staff ran a reallocation request process for the 11 grantees. It invited all 11 to seek additional funds to support their existing approved projects. So these were not to propose new projects, but just the projects that had already been approved by this committee. They could propose essentially a sort of expansion of that work, or maybe they could just seek additional funds to do to deliver on their original project targets. 4 of the 11 grantees did apply for additional funding. They're in the table here. And altogether, they requested $335,810, which is obviously less than the now $416,000, $594 that is available. So more than what Public Counsel originally volunteered to relinquish. So this would use some of those funds that staff has that seeks to reallocate of its administrative line. So the four CalHFA grantees, current grantees that are seeking additional funds are CRLA, that's a QLSP, HERA, HERA is a QLSP, Legal Assistance to the Elderly is a QLSP, and National Housing Law Project, which is a support center. And in the materials for today's meeting, we included what we call profile sheets for all four of those organizations as requests. So you can see their project abstract for their originally approved project and how they would use these additional funds that they're seeking. Their original award is in column 3, so you can just sort of get a sense if they got like a really big award or a small award compared to one another, and then their request is in the final column. And I can tab back to the slide at any point if that's helpful, but I'm going to just move on to the next one. State Bar staff reviewed all four requests for reasonableness. Staff was prepared to run sort of like competitive analysis to bring forward sort of competitive reallocation recommendations to this committee if the sum of requests had exceeded the funds available. But since the sum was less than the funds available, staff instead evaluated all the requests for reasonableness and justification and proposed uses. So among other things, staff looked at how they would spend the additional funds that they were seeking with respect to their original approved project budget. So we saw their original budgets, we saw where they would slot in the additional funds, if it would go to personnel versus non-personnel, programs versus admin, within the original budget categories. And then we evaluated their narrative explanations for why they were seeking more funding, their narrative explanations for, we could see how if it was going to personnel versus non-personnel or rent versus supplies, but then their narrative explanation for exactly what it would do to support or increase their deliverables. We asked specifically about any additional geographic areas or communities, like tribal communities or socially disadvantaged communities, the additional funds would help them to serve. And we analyzed their project's current progress to date so that if they were really far behind in their original targets, we could at least take that into account in our recommendation to you today if it made sense for them to get additional funding. All four requests would put most of the funding, I think one or two actually would put practically all of the funding towards attorney time on their approved project. 3 of the grantees, 3 of the 4, would all of them, but except legal assistance to elderly, would actually use the additional funds to expand the scope or quantity of the work that they're doing. So National Housing Law Project actually pitched a sort of like a substantive add-on, like the scope of work. They would take a new area of federal housing law that's within the parameters of Treasury guidance for these funds to just kind of expand the legal training and technical assistance that they do. CRLA and HERA would actually just increase the amount of work that they do. And then legal assistance to the elderly would use the funds to try and still hit their original targets. Staff found all 4 requests to be reasonable in their justifications, their explanations, their proposed uses, the ratio of updated spending on personnel versus non-personnel, programs versus administrative costs. And in order to promote the full spend down of CalHFA grant funds on permissible work that's been pre-approved by this committee, staff does today recommend that each applicant for reallocation get the full amount that it seeks. I'll just tab back one more time because I think the next slide is essentially a proposed resolution. So I'll tab back to this slide to see if you have any questions about the posted materials or these requests or what the plan is. But essentially staff is proposing or recommends giving them their full request, which would successfully reallocate the funds that the public counsel had volunteered to relinquish and some of the funds that staff volunteered to put into the pot to support existing projects.
I've got 2 questions that are more geared towards the funds that we have available. I guess the first question is, I guess we can start at the beginning, which is can you speak a little bit more to where this 200,000 is from, or in other words, why that wasn't is that just administrative funds that we don't need? Is that kind of, we didn't plan for it? Such, it just seems like a very round number, and I want to get a better grasp of where
Yeah,
that.
so, and I'll invite Dwan to like supplement this explanation, but what we did is we looked at, so we on July 1 will enter the final year of the 3-year grant periods. We're coming up on the end of the second year. And so what we did as State Bar staff is we looked at how much State Bar staff was spending, and it's the funds that we have to administer these grants every month since the start of the grant period, to get a sense of what like the monthly average for our expenditures, which kind of ebbs and flows over the course of a calendar year, depending on whether or not we're doing reporting. But we enough time had passed that we had a sense of like what our monthly spend down rate was as a staff team that administers the funds. And then we projected out how much funding we thought we would need through the end of our contract with CalHFA, which actually goes past the end of the 3-year grant period because we have some closeout work we do, including filing a final report. So projecting out our costs through the end of our contract with CalHFA, we determined that we would have at least $200,000. So because it is such a round number, that was sort of a safe conservative estimate that would give us a little buffer as staff. We would have at least $200,000 that we could safely volunteer to a staff to relinquish to the grantees to supplement their projects.
That's helpful. That's good to know, and I'm glad to hear that there's a buffer, because I think, you know, it's this, obviously this money is meant to support admin, and I wouldn't want us to be in a situation where we're not at the end, where there might be, you know, some need as well. And that kind of gets to the second question I have, which is, it looks like there'll be at least then another $80,000 or so, or whatever the balance is. My math skills are not up to par right now. But what's going to happen to that? What can happen to that money, and or what are the options that we have with respect to that money?
Chris, let me take that one, Chris. So we have, let me answer it like this. If we have any unspent funds at the end, whether there's more funds that return to us or there's more admin that we can't spend, then we'll remit it back to CalHFA. And I don't know if then they remit it back to Treasury or where they need to, but we will return the funds. Because we know that our spend down rate for the admin is less than we had anticipated. And, you know, part of the reason is it's a small cohort of grantees and they don't have compliance issues, which is great. So usually our compliance issues really sucks up our admin. And it's been a really great cohort of grantees. We do want to be cautious because you never know, things could crop up, or, you know, we might want to deal, or maybe a report takes a little bit longer. But one thing that I have been talking to Chris about is, can we use it in a way that's like helpful for grantees, right? Are there more trainings we can provide? Are there more robust like technical assistance? Is there something that maybe like as a cohort, the programs want to see that we can provide it, so they can't absorb it? Seems like what they want, but is there something the State Bar more that they can do? And I think we're at that kind of exploratory phase. Chris, aren't you meeting with them at a roundtable or something, and you're going to be probably engaging more with the grantees? So we'll have a opportunity to kind of ask them directly, what is it that the State Bar can do for you? Because, you know, sometimes it's like they would want to, but it's also resource intensive to say like we're going to organize a training. So maybe it's us doing it and we just like spend down our admin that way. And again, we don't want to be wasteful. So really at the end of the day, there is not something that we have funds left over. We'll cut a check back to CalHFA.
I like the idea of if there's a way for us to use the funds in a way that's helpful for a variety of reasons, you know, first and foremost of which it'll be helpful to the grantees and consistent with what the purpose of the funds is. And also it gets to some of the things that we've talked about in the past about, you know, if we're sort of because it, like you said, if it ebbs and flows, and you know, some things require more and some things require less, some, you know, administration of grants, I wouldn't want us to be in a situation where we're being very efficient here, and that maybe dictates what our admin will be on another grant, and then those ultimately might be more complicated and require funds.
Our admin percentage on this grant was higher than the other grants. They actually offered us more, and we decided to, even at the outset, take a lower cut because we knew we could do it efficiently. But they were really surprised that we were able to administer our other grant funding with a lot less, because when they contract out with other state agencies, the admin is like in the double digits, and we took a single digit, and even then that single digit was more than what we usually take. So they were really surprised. They actually wanted to give us like 3% more, and I said no, like we know we can do this for less than
Yeah.
What are others doing with that money that we're
No,
not?
other state agencies, you'd be surprised. The indirect costs is like 15% in some instances. And then
Wow.
a private foundation could be sometimes higher than that. 10% is not unheard of, 11%. We're high volume, right? So that's why we're
Right.
able to do it. So
Right.
we now that we do across eight funding sources, our staff is trained. Like when we do, and this other thing, the efficiency of it, because we do monitoring visit for IOLTA and EF already for the longest time. When we tack on monitoring for CalHFA, it's not a heavy lift. I mean, CalHFA also has a desk review because it's federal grants, but some of the monitoring that's where like the efficiency really, because you're not going out just for CalHFA, you're going
Right.
out and you're monitoring 6 other grants too. So if you are contracting with an agency that maybe is not doing as much grants and that's their only, then they probably the 10%, 15% is not unreasonable.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
And yeah, to Duan's kind of like point earlier, we're for not just CalHFA, but we are kind of piloting this in some respects with CalHFA, but for a lot of grants, we're excited to, and starting with CalHFA, launch what I've been calling a training and technical assistance initiative. So part of that for the CalHFA funds is going to be a roundtable in June with the 11 grantees, bringing those who can come in person together in person with us, and those maybe in SoCal will join remotely, but for like a 2 to 2.5 hour meeting where we're going to look at all of the data they've been, and CalHRC, right, our agency that oversees our work on this, will also be attending, to look at all the data that they've been submitting each quarter to facilitate a long conversation about services delivery strategy, including maximizing geographic spread so these dollars can serve as much of California as possible. And CalHRC has asked us to like talk about impacts on tribal communities. So we're going to have what we call like kind of like a technical assistance, delivery strategy. It's not quite compliance. A lot of our existing use of these dollars is very like monitoring and compliance focused, but this is just going to be how can we help you maximize the impact of your projects with the data and peer support by providing a space for that. And so that's like an example of a clever way we're trying to make sure we as staff maximize the use of our funds to administer these grants. That's not just like, all right, it's time for you to file your quarterly report and, and we'll be doing a monitoring visit next month.
Yeah. But Selena, if you have other thoughts too, because we do have admin funds that we can spend, let us know, like, and we'd have to check if there are things that are a little bit non-traditional, like a wellness program for the staff that work on this, then we just need to get approval from CalHFA. It's not insurmountable. So if you think of anything like creative that usually maybe you wouldn't think a part of a grant, but that we could and would be helpful, pass it along, because it might not be obvious to us.
Would that include just like training, like us coordinating, us meaning us, not LAC, coordinating a training, and then the state bar pays the cost?
Yeah, that could be all that. They're pretty flexible on their within the limitation of, I guess, the federal fund. There's things that we can spend and things we can't, but CalHFA though itself is very flexible in letting us, as the JC is, like if it's reasonable kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a good list of where people want training, and I assume that the CalHFA the staff working on CalHFA grants would want it around.
That would be great, yeah.
I mean, just like a couple of examples would be like David Crookshank's, like various trainings for train the trainers. Ian Brennan does a great training for helping people who are in crisis, like de-escalation training. There's a lot of those that are just people keep asking for them, and if CalHFA staff get to go, then that helps them.
That would be great. So maybe if you can get us the list, and then Chris, I would just clear that with CalHFA, and then you can maybe share that with everybody at the roundtable, or even invite Selena to come and do like a 5-minute or 10-minute or something if she can.
Wonderful.
Chris, I'll connect you with Kasha, who is our lead.
Okay.
Thank you, Selena. And Selena, we'll share the invitation with you, but just to say it aloud, the roundtable will be on June 10th. 2 to 4 p.m. at the State Bar's office in San Francisco. So if they can come in person, that's even better. But there'll be a Zoom option if not.
June 10th. From when to when again?
2 to 4:30.
Yeah, and no pressure. We can also just communicate the information too. So we can coordinate with you offline, Selena.
Yeah. So if they don't need to cancel meetings or anything, but yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question, but I do want to just first say like how impressed I am with staff and like your ability to like just like this just like reiterates what I think we're doing with all the like strategic you know planning process is like you guys really are sort of like a premier like grant administration like group. So amazing job, very impressed. Um and you know, I also the for the roundtable, if you think it'd be useful to have like a commission member come, whether it's like, you know, HP's committee chair or like you want one of us to come, like we don't need to stay the whole time, but if it would be useful for us to come and just say like, you know, do an intro and say hello, happy to do that as well. Cause I do think it's important for us to like,
Yeah.
you know, actually like meet and interact with the community on this. So
I love
I'm just
that.
throwing that out
That's a great
there.
idea.
Yeah. And the executive committee oversees this grant as far as any
Yeah,
committee
so
does.
if,
So
if one of the two of you, I mean, it might be far for you to fly, but Erica, if you can come down, that we would love to have either of you or both.
Yeah, I would love to come in. What I'll try to do is coordinate and maybe work out of the SF office for the day. And so I can like come over, see you guys. And then, like I said, I don't know if you think it'd be useful for me to stay the whole time, because you think it would be good for me to like engage with them, I can arrange that. If it would be easier for you guys for me to just come in and do like a meet and greet, also happy to do that too. So, but yeah, I think to the extent that it would be good for you know, different commissioners to kind of attend some of these like webinars or trainings or meetings with the organizations, I would encourage us if possible to do some of that.
Yeah.
So just that's
No,
my
that's
2 cents.
great.
The one substantive question I had, and I think your recommendation is great, but I did just have a quick question on legal assistance to the elderly and whether just it seemed like there was some issue with their like they were struggling a little bit with their deliverables. No issues going on. I just wanted to just like confirm we're all that
I
just happens
appreciate
to
you
be a complex
asking.
area of law that was a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So LAE, legal sensibility was the one, if you were to read yeah, you're alluding to like the information in the profile sheets, which is the entirety of their like reallocation responses.
Which is fine. Like I said, I don't have a problem with giving them. I just
Yeah,
had to.
but like,
I
what's
had
the
to just
backstory
quick ask
there?
the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we actually do meet with them periodically. We're just wrapping up a series of what we call check-ins with all 11 of them. I think we have like one more left to do. So we do kind of get the like, how's it really going? Is this challenging? And, you know, staff, you know, that's where they talk to us about things like staff retention issues and hiring challenges. So for LAE, they're they're doing a great job. Their quality source is very high. They're an exemplary program. They're also very honest though, in that this was a new area of law for them, foreclosure prevention work for seniors, and they underestimated how what it would cost per case to do the work. So they're trying to hit their original, and this was like, you know, as of like 2 years ago now, their original case closing targets, and they're doing like limited to full scope representation, and they're just finding each case is more expensive than they thought. They were the one that we looked the most closely at in sort of like of these four, as far as like that last category of analysis, like progress to date, because they were the ones seeking additional funds to hit their original numbers, and they weren't proposing an expansion of their deliverables. But one of the reasons staff felt comfortable, because knowing that the quality of the service is very good, one of the reasons we felt comfortable recommending them for their full request is because it was such a modest request. An additional the 4, the 45, but I'm glad that you asked, and we looked at them extra carefully for that reason.
And I should say, like, look, this is where I think grants can be really great, is to the extent that we can like empower organizations to like climb a steep learning curve in order to like provide those services. Like, this is great. This is what it can be. I'm just curious to kind of see, and so I'm glad to hear that they're a great organization, and to the extent that we can continue to support them and kind of building out this new area, that's really great. Thank you guys for
I was gonna say, I
questions.
agree with that. We should kind of promote that, and also like like what public council did, like they
Yep.
could use a fund and they were really upfront so that like a colleague another program can use it. So I think we do want to foster that type of like openness with us so that the
Totally.
community can benefit.
Awesome. Yeah, and I didn't mean my question to be like questioning. I was just, they were a little bit of the anomaly, so
Yeah.
I just wanted
Yeah.
to get some more info. But that's
It's a
really
good
great.
question because we did for all four of them look at like their progress today, and they were upfront about the fact that they thought they needed more funds to just hit their original targets. So yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I
Um,
think it's great when the organizations are expanding their services. So I'm happy that we're supporting them. Cool. I don't
um,
have any more questions. Amin, how about you? Okay. Are you up for making a motion to adopt staff's recommendation?
Yes, I will move to adopt the resolution that's on the screen right now.
And I will second.
Okay, I'll do roll call. Al-Saraf,
Yes.
Connolly.
Yes.
Okay, 2 yes, 0 no's, motion passes.
Great. Thank you guys. Very good conversation, and thank you for the information, Chris. Okay, so let's move to the recommendation to approve CalHFA grant budget revisions. Is this Chris? This is you again?
this is me. I have the pleasure of having 4.2, 4.3, and 4.4. So I'll just
Perfect.
keep
Okay.
sharing my screen. So for 4.3, we knew we were going to be getting a CalHFA grant budget revision request from CRLA, but we were unsure at the time that we put this on the agenda if it was going to rise to the dollar amount that would require staff, if it would be sort of like what we call like self-executing budget revision because it's less than 10% of the total award, if staff could approve it, or if the committee would need to recommend approval to the commission. It turned out after the agenda was posted for this meeting that the request was for less than 10% of the total award.
Oh.
So it is a self-executing or implementing budget revision, and therefore we don't need to present a recommendation on it. So for 4.3, we can skip it.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you guys nevertheless for agendizing it just in case. Okay. Then let's move on to 4.4, appointing an advisory body, the Legal Services Trust Fund Program.
Thank you. And this is
Great.
mine too. So for this one, we are going through a process to ensure that our office and the commission and its committees have successfully implemented different changes that it has made, like and that the State Bar Board of Trustees has approved to the State Bar rules. So all the codification work in the last year or two, making sure that we've acted on everything as is appropriate and necessary. So one of the changes to the State Bar rules is with regards to complaints that anyone might file against a current grantee. We call them sometimes client complaints, but technically the complaint could come from any source. It doesn't have to be a current or former client of a grantee. But Rule 3.692 is with regards to complaints. And one of the changes that it made, I believe starting on July 1, 2023, is it directs, and I'm just going to say up front that this actually may not, and unless you disagree, this may not actually require a vote today after all. I agendized it as though it might just in an abundance of caution, but my reading of the rule is actually this does not require a vote today, but we do want to tee this up for you because a complaint could arrive any day. We want to make sure you know this is the new rule. It directs the co-chairs of the commission. It doesn't say the executive committee specifically, but the commission's co-chairs to appoint what's called an advisory body to sort of facilitate resolution of complaints. So because we actually do not have a complaint before us today that would require the two co-chairs to appoint an advisory body today, we can actually put a pin in the appointment and wait for a complaint to arrive before reaching out to commissioners to see about their interest and availability to serve on an advisory body. So no need to like task anyone today. We want though to make sure that this is just ready for you. So this is just a short 2 slides, likely no vote, update on this change to the rules. And it is, I'm not going to probably read this whole excerpt to you, but essentially I just wanted to make sure you knew for background what the rule would require this advisory body to do. So under State Bar Rule 3.692, State Bar staff will first, and this was what we always did before, attempt to resolve the complaint that was filed against a grantee. The rule provides that staff will do that within 90 days, and if attempt to resolve it within 90 days. If the complainant or grant recipient objects to staff's proposed resolution, then staff must provide the complainant, the grant recipient, and an advisory body comprised of 2 commissioners that the co-chairs will appoint with a written report of its efforts to resolve the complaint. I'm going to move to the next slide. This is my only other slide on this topic. And essentially, this just sort of lays out what the advisory body would do in that situation, would consider the report, it would recommend dismissal of the complaint, or schedule an informal conference to determine whether the complaint should be dismissed or what other action should be taken. The advisory body would be empowered under the rule to issue written recommendations on how to resolve the complaint to this committee. And it can recommend that the commission terminate or consider terminating a grantee's funding or otherwise offer recommendations for the complaint process. So this is just something we want to, as part of our broader effort to implement changes to the State Bar rules, we wanted to just bring this to your attention. If we had an actual complaint before us, we would come with a recommendation for actual appointments, but we might want to just sort of like plant the seed in your minds. Going forward, there will be an advisory body of 2 commissioners to help resolve complaints. I'm not going to make a recommendation for any particular commissioners because we haven't checked in with any about interest or availability, but I can imagine a situation where maybe you would want one of the advisory body members to be someone who used to work at a grantee organization, a former executive director, so they understand the context of how grantees do their work, and maybe the other commissioner would be someone who might better understand the client's perspective or something. You can imagine a composition of an advisory body that would be very thoughtful and balanced in that respect. Dwan, it's my reading that the State Bar rule simply says the co-chairs will appoint an advisory body, that this does not require a vote, and we can
It doesn't
simply
require a vote. And
Yeah.
the thing is, this year we don't have a co-chair. So if it happened like this cycle, then it would just be Erica could appoint somebody under her authority. If next year we move back to 2 co-chairs, then it would be the co-chairs to do it. And the thing is, Erica, you couldn't actually choose to appoint somebody now. You don't have to wait for our suggestion, which is when there's a live complaint, because the other thing is it's actually a really small likelihood that it would get to that point, because we have within 90 days, Chris,
90
to resolve that. So there was one complaint, I don't know if you'll recall, that was brought to you, I want to say 2 years ago, and that's because we messed up the timeline, and so we had to elevate it to you because we blew the 90-day deadline. But other than that, we've never, since I've been here, blown that deadline to have to bring it to the commission. So now that we actually have a protocol in our office to kind of, when it comes in, to make sure we don't blow that deadline. So I think the likelihood that it's going to come, it's very, very minuscule. So that's why Chris and I are thinking is maybe not appoint somebody now, because again, there just might not be work to do, and then they're just like in waiting, right? If it comes to that, then whoever's the chair or the co-chair at that time can make the appointment. But again, we wanted to bring awareness that this exists in case we need to exercise it.
And just remind me, this is like one of the rules that we passed in the last year or 2.
Yeah. This is part of the
Okay.
convocation process, and this was
Got it.
really an outgrowth of like the staff blew that deadline. And the thing is, we do want to be able to resolve it within the 90 days, because we don't have to notice at a public meeting, even when it's like amicably resolved. Like, it's at a public meeting, some programs may feel like there's like a taint, even though like the allegation might have no merits. And so we do try to be within that 90 days.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, Selena has her hand raised.
Oh, my only point is that when it has passed the 90 days recently, it was largely due to COVID related delays and trying to get her back, and the potential client complaining part of the problem is that the organization couldn't actually get him to reply to emails or phone. So I think the real challenge here is that organizations do a ton of work and take it very seriously if there's a client complaint, and then when it arises to the full commission discussion, I don't even want to guess at how many staff hours the organization spent trying to reply to this in a way that felt transparent and open, because it wasn't a public meeting.
Yeah.
So I think everybody takes it really seriously, and to the extent that it can be solved more quickly, I think that is kind of it allows organizations to spend more time helping clients.
Yeah. And I think because it's so infrequent, we actually get a complaint. I have to say, I'll speak to that, the time that we blew the deadline. I think it was like no clear process, but now that we revised the rules, that there's clear protocol, and one thing being is like that staff thought that they needed like an affirmative like okay from the client that was complaining, but that's not the case. We've now revised it to say, as long as we've done kind of a sweep of it, and we want to ensure that the grantees in compliance with our governing authorities and so forth, we can make a determination. So if the client doesn't get back to us, the client, we can still move forward with the determination. We don't actually need to literally wait for the client to like sign off on it. So there are things that we're doing now that we shouldn't have a problem meeting the 90 days. But again, if it's something sticky, and then we would, yeah. Anyway, so I don't foresee us needing to exercise this, but it's good to have.
That makes sense. I mean, I think I appreciate you guys bringing our attention to it, and I will give some thought to if some complaint comes in and the clock starts ticking in 90 days, like who would be good to be on the advisory body. My inclination at this time, though, is when we do kind of our infrastructure committee, maybe that's the time to like, as we give thought to like how we restructure, that might be the time to kind of at the beginning of the year kind of have sort of put together the advisory body that just is a little bit on call for the year. But I think at this point, I think it'll be necessary. If something comes up, we'll do it in ASAP. But I tend to agree that without a complaint in hand, we'll in the next sort of go around, I think we can like this one.
Yeah.
Together.
And again, it's very infrequent. We haven't had a complaint all year.
And obviously if something changes, just let me know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay.
If anything changes, just, obviously let us know. But that's my inclination. I mean, do you have any disagreement with that approach?
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it's hopefully, and not just hopefully, I think based on the track record, this is something that's probably not going to be used, if at all, very often. Then but I think it's a good idea for us to have it and have it ready, such that there are folks who are ready to jump on. Because I think even if a complaint comes in, the 90 days starts taking for the staff. I think we'd want people to still have some time to kind of get up to speed and be ready for having to jump into a situation. But I'm good with wait. I'm not suggesting that we do that now or in the next, meeting, but I think probably in the next cycle makes sense.
Yeah, great. But thanks for flagging that, and I appreciate you guys keeping us honest on our
changes
stuff.
to the state bar rules.
Yeah,
I have a question on this actually.
The rules committee. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, so as I read it, and I remember going through some of this process, but as I read it, is this a situation where in theory, if necessary, the co-chair or the chair can appoint a body that's on whatever timeline they choose? In other words, theoretically, if a complaint comes in and we don't have a body, then they can select that body at that point. And perhaps by the time the next one comes in, they can appoint a different, like,
it doesn't have to be the same.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like there's a need for it. So I like Erica's idea of, on a yearly basis, we have like one group. Do you think, there may be some value in consistency between, between these, but it's all going to be very fact heavy, very fact intensive.
Yeah, I tend to agree that I don't think we should have like new people for each incident. I do think it's worth on the next cycle, like having an advisory board, like that's their job, and to have the consistency. But given that we don't have a complaint right now, we should, I think doing it in the next cycle is probably okay. And if something came up, it sounds like it doesn't, I don't know if we have to call a meeting for me to like appoint the advisory board, but
No,
given that they
because
don't
if
actually
it's just
do
you and your cycle,
anything.
it's just you, Erica, because you don't have
Yeah.
a co-chair. You can just decide. But again, I want to underscore they come up very infrequent, and we don't anticipate blowing
I'm
the
just,
90 days deadline. So we would only bring it to you all if we blew like it past that 90. So again, the likelihood of it is low. Not to say we should not plan. That's why we're bringing it to your attention. But even if you appointed somebody like for the year, or that's what you guys, you choose to go in that direction, you want to build their expertise. You might not build the expertise. You might not get one
Right.
for a year or 2 or 3 or whatever kind of a thing.
okay, all makes sense. Well, thanks for letting us know, and we'll keep that in mind for the next year, if we get all our appointments settled. Okay, and then I guess our last agenda item is reviewing the agenda for the next meeting.
Yeah, so let me and I did ask the staff, like, let's pull up what we think is really non-controversial into the consent, because there are a couple topics that are going to be heavy topics, and then that's where I want to spend our time talking on how you want to divide it up and the ordering and so forth. So let me share my screen.
And then Dwan, if it makes sense, I can briefly report back on the meeting yesterday after when you get to the item about
Oh,
district.
yeah, that'd be great. Okay. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So let me just quickly on the consent stuff. There are a couple carryover stuff that we missed. HP, what is this? HP. Help me out with this, Chris. What is this? HP, there's budget. I think it's just it's the
I
four.
think
Okay,
so.
it's sorry, budget requests approval. Sorry. I was reading this for. I was like, what is that? So some HP budget revisions, some codification topics that we've decided for codification topics, we'll bring it up to consent. RFP for partnership, again, no major substantive changes. And then the iLaw reports that go through eligibility and budget review committee. And, there was only 1 or 2 activities that they ended up talking about. And so there's a memo. I don't think we need to discuss any of these items right here. And then, and then audit extensions. Again, that already EBR dealt with it and is going to recommend approval. So I don't think controversial. Okay, so here's the bulk of our stuff. But so the heavy one is obviously our strategic plan. IOLTA distribution. Erica's already heard this, but just to give you a heads up, IOLTA revenue for Q1 2024 is very large. So we're projecting out a very large distribution for 2025. And then what the staff has done to try to be helpful to the commission is we've changed the reserve policy, right? So our distribution for the following year for 2025 is going to be based on just the revenue for 2024. So different than before in that we were projecting out 2 years worth. We're only projecting out 3/4 worth of revenue, but we wanted to provide projections a couple years out so you can see, because they're going to be kind of some wild swings. Next year's revenue, and we provided a few projections for you, like options for your projections, but even in any scenario, it's going to be over $200 million distribution. But you'll see that then we build in, because feds have already signaled that they're going to be cutting, so we built in some drops for this year and some drops for next year. So then, depending on when that happens, again, it's like, we don't have a crystal ball, but it's just a guess. We're starting to go down, so it can go from like 225 down to the next year to like 175 to the following year of 125. So again, like wild kind of swings, but maybe it'll stay high, right? Because you guys all know, we do tend to project a little conservatively in this office, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because what we don't want to be is on the other side where we're like, we miscalculate and then we have to ask for the money back. But then, you have to balance it out, right? If you're holding back so much money, like we're not really maximizing like the utility of it, right? So that's where the commission comes in and you all will make a determination. So I imagine that conversation will be pretty robust. I'm going to try to work with Selena in advance to kind of see if there are data points to share with the community. LAC and One Justice did a survey in terms of like funding cuts and the impact and like how programs are feeling, so I can share the results of that. I do imagine that's going to be a pretty robust discussion. 4.3 and 4.4 are not should be not they're pretty quick items. They're Chris's item, but there's been some developments with CareCourt that I do think it should not be on consent, that we wanted to share it with you guys and the delegation of authority and so forth. So that's why 4.3 and 4.4 is on. 4.5, we do unfortunately need to talk about California Welfare Rights Organization because they're still out of compliance with their HP grants. We had to actually call another an ad hoc HP committee meeting we're really trying to come to some recommendation to bring to the commission so that we can like kind of have some resolution to move on, but that is going to warrant some discussion because there might be a recommendation to not release some of their funding because we can't validate it. So I would say 4.1, 4.2, and 4.5 will be heavy, and then 4.3, 4.4 on the light side. And then we move into our reports. My report will probably be quick. I do want Heidi and Michael to spend a little bit time kind of explaining. We got back our single audit. It's a clean audit, but what we want to do though is explain like we're undergoing 5 audits right now, just so that the commission can see kind of the breadth of it. I'll attach what is available so far, which is the single audit, and I can't remember, I think the state bar audit is also available, but I think that warrants a little bit of discussion. Selena is going to do a presentation on the executive directors retreats that we help fund, and then it'll be the JC and then LAC report. But I think the reporting here is all pretty quick. Like the executive director's report, that's probably like 10 minutes, right? Celine, 10, 15 minutes, something like that. So this last piece right here can be half an hour. I guess my question to the two of you is how do you want to divide, how do you want to order it? And what are like suggested time frames? Because I'm having a really hard time. Like I don't think we want to be cheap with the strategic planning, but then at some point, like you want to limit it, but I don't really know what that means. So. Erica, I mean, I don't know if you guys have
Yeah,
thoughts.
can you?
Yeah, sorry, I'm having a pause. I'm trying to
Yeah.
think.
No problem. I think IOLTA would probably usually takes 45 minutes-ish, an hour maybe sometimes.
I mean, in some ways, that might take a little bit less just because we sort of settled the reserve policy
Yeah.
in some ways.
It's a formula
Like,
pretty much now at this point.
yeah, I feel like in the past where there's been more debate is always on the like, how much do we hold? How much do we put out? But we
Mhm.
sort of we sort of bound ourselves to
Mhm.
that. And I think there's very good reasons not to leave those bounds. So I'm a little worried about that the CCWRO conversation is going to go long, maybe and be really robust. Not worried, but just that will take some time.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's
I don't know. I mean, do you have thoughts?
I think it's your approach on that one, Erica, because
True.
it's very fact intensive how it's going to come out. So it's a matter of whether you think the commission should be relitigating what the HP committee's done or whether you don't. So that I think that's going to depend on you.
Yes. And HP committee's already has it already made its recommendation?
No, we
Or
couldn't. They
will it
couldn't.
before?
I'll give you the short of it. They submitted timesheets that we were not able to validate because of it suggested heavily that it was based on a formula versus actual time, and then they didn't take into account holiday time and all the stuff. So it was clearly like a non-accurate timesheet. So the staff recommendation, at least at this point, it might change depending if we get more information, is that even if we were to give them another chance, they don't have the mechanism to provide actual time because we've already asked for it probably half a dozen times. So again, this is where it's fact intensive, because if the commission and if the committee and the commission don't agree with that kind of assessment, then we are required to then give them more opportunity. So that's why it's very fact intensive. Do you want to go through that? It's because it's like a lot of back and forth, and that's why the committee is now spending another meeting. They have to call another ad hoc meeting because we don't have, even now, I couldn't tell you because we don't have all the data points to tell you what we can validate and
Yep, yep.
what we can't. So if you want to go through all of that, I mean, there's an extensive memo that outlines it, but yeah, do you want us to give you the play-by-play? And that's where it becomes very, I would say it can get
I
long.
mean, look, my preference would be is that the commission sort of reviews the committee's decision making for kind of like an abuse of discretion standard, right? Like, is it within the realm of what's like, as long as there's nothing particularly, you know, problematic with what the committee did, I think we ought to, yeah, I mean, I think we can cabinet in an appropriate way, and I will do my best to do that. I obviously can't always control what everyone else is gonna say.
Can I
But
ask a
I
question?
also know that,
Mhm.
Sorry,
yeah, of
Erica.
course.
No, I didn't mean to
Yep,
cut you
yep.
off.
Please go ahead.
I guess the question I have is since they have to call an ad hoc, is it likely that the information that they would that we would need or they would need to come up with a recommendation, or the like appropriate time that they would need to deliberate to give a recommendation, is like, do we have that kind of time before the next meeting, or is it
It was tight for the committee, but they're calling a meeting. I think they have something on the books for like, I want to say like the second week of June, so that they can then take that memo and turn it around for the commission. It's very tight. I mean, it wasn't ideal, right? Because it's hard to call a meeting. But the thing is like, where I think the staff felt uncomfortable is because if they're out of compliance, then like they felt like we should do something and not wait until August, the next commission meeting. And so that's why they were trying to give you all some recommendation.
I guess here, and I'm not suggesting that this is where we should end up, but I'm just kind of curious about in terms of what our options are, because this is obviously something that's significant. It's something that we're not going to be able to, I don't think, in a meaningful way relitigate among the commission, who are going to be looking at this with not completely but somewhat fresh eyes, without the benefit of all the deliberation and fact finding that the committee is going to be doing. Is it an option for us to delegate that authority to make a decision as to how to proceed to the HP committee?
You can delegate it, but they're coming to you with I guess with a proposal. So the delegation to me is like the approving their motion.
Well, what I'm suggesting is if they need more time to do that, right? If they need more time to come up with a recommendation, and we're dealing with a timing issue, could we resolve it in that way rather than sort of rushing the process to get to a recommendation that may not be fully? It's just
and I don't know. I'm curious what Erica thinks about that, because where I think, and this is where the staff hesitate too, unlike, because it does require like, in terms of like a return of fund, like a decrease of funding, like there's a dollar consequence to it, right? That it feels like the commission should weigh in when it's that type of decision. I mean, that's me personally.
Yeah.
I think that would give I know it certainly would give the staff the comfort that the whole commission is, and again, we've said this before, like, the staff have a recommendation, right? But I think what's most important to us is that it's done right. So if you all don't agree with it because you think that, like, for whatever reason, right, then I think we would rather know than to like it, come back and I don't know, that just it feels like when there's an impact that's a dollar amount, that's where like it feels like the commission should weigh in.
No, I get it, and I agree. I think accountability has to lie with the commission, and if the commission isn't making that decision as a body, as a group, it increases the chances of the after the fact second guessing, for sure. But if it sounds like they're going to be on track to kind of have that meeting and get to us a recommendation, I don't know that that's necessary anyways.
Yeah, no, they have calendar the meetings, and the meetings happen. It's turning on a couple things though, right? Because we've given the organization another deadline to submit us materials. We gave them an original deadline, and they actually said that they couldn't meet it because it was a lot of things. So what I said to the staff was, let's try to be generous. Can we just cut the difference? Like if the staff had a week to review it, can you give them 2 days of your 6 days or whatever? And then we did that. So we just split it. We're going to cut into our review time, but this is again assuming that they can get us that by now, that new deadline. If they get it to us and it's like a lot later with the high volume it is, we're not going to be able to, that committee is not going to be able to move in a meaningful way. So again, it turns on that too. But I'm hoping this time they can, right? But it has been calendared,
Just
so.
to confirm a couple of
Oh, sorry,
things,
you're
I
cutting
just have
out,
a couple
Erica.
questions. Oh, sorry, I'm in a little bit of a hole because my phone was dying.
Oh, no problem.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. This is state grants, not federal grants.
This is federal grants. This is why the standard is higher. If it was actually IOLTA or EF, I think we could be a lot flexible on their timesheets and get like an estimate as we do with some of our other, but because it's federal and the federal CFR requirements require actual time, they actually allow for an estimate in the interim, but then you have to shore it up at the end of the year. So at some point it needs to be based on actual time.
Right. But then I thought the CFR also required us to do a lot of
Steps, yeah.
hand-holding
So we've done all the
before.
steps. So this is why I say
Okay, that's what,
this is why I say it's
yeah.
fact intensive, because it turns on whether the commission can make a determination of if you're going to provide more technical assistance or more support, can you get them there? If you make a determination that
Right,
with more
right.
time, with more technical assistance, more training, they can take corrective action, then you have to provide that with them. And this is why it's fact intensive. I think the staff is at a point where we've told them 6 times or however many times to do an actual and they still haven't done an actual. So we don't think that they can do an actual. If you don't agree with that and you think actually you guys should continue, because now they have said, and they have said at this last public meeting, we didn't know we had to do an actual. If we knew we had to do an actual, we would do an actual. So if you take that and you agree with that, then you don't agree with the staff. And so this is why I say it's fact intensive, because it's not like it's a judgment call,
Okay.
right? So if
Yeah,
you
yeah.
believe that, then we need to give them more time to take corrective action. So that's why it turns on the facts, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess one of my recommendations is to the extent that you can get a commission member from the HP committee to kind of present or sort of be explaining. I think that will help facilitate some of the decision making at the commission level.
Mhm.
And having someone, it's Efrain that's
He's
the
a chair,
chair.
yeah.
Okay. Whether it's Efrain, I can't remember who else is on that committee, but just having someone who can maybe with staff kind of give the committee's explanation as to why they ultimately came to that decision. I think that will help facilitate on the commission level comfort with whatever the recommendation is. So,
I
and
think
if
that's a
there's
good
anything
idea.
I can do to help with facilitating that, let me know.
Yeah.
And
No,
then
and we'll
if you
coordinate
could
with
send
you.
me, yeah,
Yeah, I
if you
think that's
could
a good
send
idea.
me the,
And they're still giving us information. So again, I said that's like the direction, but I don't really know, because the thing is like, I'm making this up, but if they like turn over and they say, listen, we actually have, look at all the notes I wrote in my journal. I don't know, right? That might be material. So I don't want to discount the possibility either, but I would say as of the last committee
sure,
meeting, the staff recommendation was, we don't think they can. We're still giving another opportunity to give us more
sure.
things. So yeah.
I understand it. I'm not predisposed at this point, one way or the
Yeah.
other. I'm just, my other suggestion is if you could maybe send to me the information on the meeting, and I may just like listen as a public member, just so I have some context as the conversation is.
Yeah.
So I can help with any explanation
Oh yeah,
at
that's a
the
good idea.
commission level of like to support on what I'm obviously not voting, and I will, vote as appropriate when it's actually in front of me, but
Yeah.
to the extent that, it would be useful for me as a an outsider to just
Yeah.
see so I can help with facilitating
Oh,
that
that's,
discussion. And
yeah. I think that would be really
so
helpful. I'll
happy to
send you
do
the
that.
invite after. I'll look it up. I can't remember the time, but I guess I should give you the backdrop
No
of
stress.
what this is happening too. Is like, so, we're subject to the 5 audits. So one of them is a
Yep.
preemptive audit by DOF, and Laura knows this. So DOF is doing a preemptive audit of estate agencies in California in preparation for like the audit from the feds, right? So they want to catch what all the agencies are doing not right, but it's very intensive. I can't even underscore how intensive this. I think every week we get several emails of like a list of between 10 and 15 questions, documents, and they're pulling literally for testing, like to see if we've
Yep.
made decisions. They track back randomly from decisions. And the good thing is everything is like trackable because we have all these memos and we have recordings and stuff like that. And like, I guess one concern is that the staff is like, if they do ask for, I would say an organization has like compliance issues, and then there is an appearance that we have not done something about it, we can get a very
Yep.
serious finding too for not being responsible with the fund, and that could spoil the pot for everybody. So again, I mean, we are
Totally.
really trying to balance like support with like what is our obligation, our requirement, and I have to say it's not an easy.
Yep.
It's not easy, right? Because I think you've heard us report to you all the amount of technical assistance, and we continue to
Yep.
give that. But like this particular grantee has come on to like public meetings and has said that they have received no technical assistance from us, or really limited technical assistance from us, or that we haven't said this or we haven't said that. So it's very difficult. But what I will say is like, we're trying a couple different strategies. We moved in different staffs to fresh eyes to like give technical assistance because maybe that will resonate. So we really are trying really our best, even though that might not appear that to the grantee. So it's just it's been a difficult situation, I think, all around for us, because we don't want to have,
Yeah.
we don't want to be in this position, right? But it's also like we don't want to have to make a recommendation of this
Absolutely.
nature, but the staff that work on it feel as if it's hard to ignore. And at what point are you enabling facilitating
Absolutely.
something that does not feel above board?
Absolutely. And like, and I should say, like, no doubt that staff has gone up far above and beyond with all the organizations, but this one I know has had a lot of staff attention, and yes. So we'll make sure that the commission understands that continues to be the case.
No, but that would be
I
great if you
think
could come to the HP meeting, Erica, because I know you're going
Yep.
to the monitoring visit. So that does give it a nice
Yes.
like thread there.
Happy to be a through line.
Yeah.
Related, and I think actually one thing that we should think about too is, as we're talking about this, the audits are a topic of conversation in the commission meeting. And so I'm not sure that we need to reorder anything, but like a little cross reference to the fact that like we have these, to your point that you're raising with us, right? There's, we are subject to audit, and part of our obligation is ensuring that the funds that we deploy are being used in an appropriate way. And I'm happy to emphasize that point too, if, but I think that's an excellent issue that we need to like make sure we flag.
Yeah.
So, yes, I will attend the HP meeting. I'm going to the monitoring visit, the organization. And that way we have someone who's sort of, I'm happy to be the person who's like a common thread through, and can help with supporting whatever the committee has decided, and we'll go from there. So I feel bad because now we've taken a lot of time on this issue.
No, I mean, it's a hard one. That's why I could see it being that way also at the commission level.
Yeah, but I actually think we should, I wouldn't change it up. I would actually start with the strategic plan. I would give that some air. That's the
Well,
exciting
how much time
stuff.
do you think we should budget? Like Erica, like at what point do we need to start cutting it off? Is that an hour? Is it at 2 hours? Just so that I can get a sense of where you know?
For the strategic or
Yeah.
for, I mean, I I think an hour is probably enough. And if we're going past an hour, like I will say we need to move on because we have really substantive stuff. Unless you think there's a reason for us to go longer, but I just feel as if the strategic priorities, my hope is that they're not going to be particularly controversial, but you know, but I think do we have and we have to vote on them? I can't
We have
remember.
to vote on it, yeah.
Okay. Then I think at some point, I mean, and I think it can be, I will be really upfront at the beginning of the meeting. Like, here is the time we're going, because we have this sort of very meaty agenda. I'll give you guys an hour to kind of talk about this, and then we're just going to vote. And if we get
Okay.
consent, and then it's up or down, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
And then, like I said, my hope is that the strategic priorities are actually fairly consistent with what we've already kind of discussed, and that even if it's not unanimity, I think we will get a majority consensus because I think they reflect things that the majority of the commission supports. And then my hope is that the reserve and the distribution issue will be not particularly controversial because we have a formula. There's very good reasons. And Selena, I think you're going to be there. And so to the extent you have views on the distribution versus the reserve, really welcome your input as well. But I hope that will be not a super controversial point, and I will make my point as well as to why I don't think it should be controversial. And then the CCWRO, like I said, I think if we have Efrain and me kind of prepared with what our understanding is of what's happening, hopefully that will address some comfort there. And so that, let me go back to the agenda. Sorry, I'm going between you guys and.
So yeah, and I
we have
think
4
I agree
hours.
with all of that.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I know you're trying. Right. And so then, because I do want to leave plenty of time for these reports. So we have what? We have 4 hours, right? So how long do you need for the reports? An hour, less, more?
I think 45 minutes for that portion. We could probably do it in a half an hour. I mean, the most meaty is probably the executive director retreats and the audit. Like my report, I want to talk a little bit about our office restructuring and kind of like the launch and some of the stuff that we're doing. But yeah, I think like 45 minutes here is good for 5.
Okay. So got it. Can you scroll up above grants
Yeah. So I would
administration?
say
just
an
wanna
hour with
refresh my memory
5
on
and all of
what's-
this stuff, and then maybe we leave like 2.5, 3 hours for the bulk of it.
Yeah, because I was gonna say the first part's like about half an hour,
Yeah.
right? You go
Yeah.
through consent. I mean, none of those I think will be particularly controversial. And then an hour at the end, so that's about an hour and a half. So we have like 2.5 hours. Okay, so then we do, let's say 45 minutes for the strategic plan.
Or maybe an hour for strategic plan.
Okay, but do you
And
think we
then
can
like,
and then do you think you can do a half an hour for kind of everything?
I do. What I was gonna say is like, though I don't think it's controversial, I do want like the newer commissioners to really understand IOLTA.
Oh, yeah,
Because it's like so foundational, and I want everybody to understand like the revenue streams and like what IOLTA is. So
Sure.
it's in the memo, but I think it's so important that I should say it out loud, even as a refresher for
Yeah,
some
no,
commissioners.
absolutely. I'm just trying to gauge it out. So if we have an hour, figure we have an hour for the first
Strategic
one.
plan, about 30 or 45 minutes for IOLTA. Again, 4.3 and
then
4.4. Chris can be very quick with that. I think that's really like 10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, and then so we have an hour to an hour and a quarter for, or I mean 45 minutes to an hour on CCWRO.
Yeah, and
And
my
then the last hour
recommendation,
there.
this is my recommendation. So Erica,
Yeah.
obviously it's your committee and you're the chair, is like we should also think about like the optics of dedicating an hour when it's already gone through committee versus like
Sure,
dedicating
yes.
20 or 30 minutes. Like there's a
That's a great point.
perception kind of a thing. Yeah.
Totally, totally. No, you're absolutely right. That's a really great point, and thank you for that reminder. I'm trying to balance
Yeah.
how much time we try to allot versus how much
Mhm.
everyone talks.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that we can, and I think also, one of the things that I think we'll be really clear on, which I think we sort of keep going back and forth on this, and I want to be more rigorous about public comments staying in the public comment section.
Mhm.
And while it can be useful sometimes to like have questions answered
Mhm.
during the meeting, it becomes an advocacy period, and then it looks unfair when we try and limit it other times. So at least at the commission meetings, I think we're going to need to limit public comment to the public comment period and like not be doing questions out in later in the time,
Yeah.
because it just becomes more of an
Yeah.
issue.
Well, and what my suggestion for public comments on these like compliance issue is like, we tend to do the public comment at the end. I think it's helpful for the commission to hear the staff presentation because it gives the context and then have the public comment come in, or you could do it right before, but I think closer in time to that agenda item is more helpful, but I don't know. That's
I mean, there's my understanding is there's two ways to do it. We have traditionally done the public comment up at the top of the meeting for everything, but I do know that there's some boards that do comment on each agenda
Mhm.
item,
Yeah.
right? I'm okay with that, but I would like it to still be limited to you get your 3 minutes,
Yeah.
and then that's it.
Yeah.
And so why don't we, unless there's some reason not to, maybe that's what we'll do for the commission meetings, is just do public comment on each agenda item.
Yeah.
So it's closer. People feel like they get their point across, that if there's
Yeah, it
members of
just
the
feels more
public that want
relevant.
to.
Like I'm sure you're gonna get
Totally.
public. I think you might get public comments for the IOLTA piece too, not just from Selena, but like there may be programs that show up, and so it just feels
Sure.
like more immediate. Like we're on that topic,
Absolutely.
and, you know.
I'm happy to do that, and I'm happy to do it like if you think it would be better to do staff, then public comment, then discussion.
You know, I
That's
leave that up to
I
you.
don't
I could see how a program would want to like do the public comments first and maybe feel like they have their say ahead of like the staff
yeah.
too. So
Okay.
that I don't feel strongly. I just think close in time to that. So it's like
Sure.
it's a complicated issue, then you have context for it. And then on the flip
Absolutely.
side of it,
Okay.
actually, sometimes I think it's helpful for the programs if the staff lays out the issue and then the programs can respond to that. But I could see the programs wanting to go first. So I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on that. I think it kind of depends on what the topic is. Like sometimes programs
Okay.
want to get in first, instead they might feel like the staff is biased. And so they want to have their, no, it's just honest
Does
reality, right?
does
So
anyone else on the yeah, sorry, Selena or Amin, do you guys have any views on this?
I mean, I feel like your instinct is usually right on when to take public comment at the very beginning and when to do it kind of peppered throughout. Because I do like it when y'all have a question and the person's still on the line to answer
that's
your
helpful.
question.
Yeah.
I also appreciate when people read the staff memos before, because I've heard public comment that it's not responsive to a staff memo. And so I usually try to tell people like staff is actually recommending this, which is good for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think on this one, maybe I like the idea of doing it closer in time. And I think we'll do it before staff, but then I'll sort of direct commissioners to be like, if you have questions, now's your time to ask them.
Yeah.
And then try to keep the discussion to the discussion and not,
Yeah.
I don't love kind of going back and forth with public comment because it's not.
We're not on
really the
trial, right? That's it.
purpose.
That's also the thing.
Exactly.
This is your all's meeting to discuss.
Exactly.
It's not a trial. The other thing, unless you think this is the wrong direction, what I've asked the staff to do is, because everything is really in the memo. If you actually read the memo, there should be more details than our presentation. Our presentation is not meant to be a replacement for the memo. So I've said to them, the highlights, you don't need to hit every single thing in the memo, but hit the main things, because the reality is there are going to be some commissioners that haven't read it. And then there's also like some members of the public that could help a recap, but it's not really intended. You should do your homework is is what I said, you know, the commissioner should come prepared to read it, and then we fill in, we remind, and then they have questions kind of a thing. We're not trying to do an extensive like rehashing of everything.
Agree on that. But as I said, I think when there are contentious issues, to the extent that you have commission members who are
Mhm.
well read
Yeah,
to help support
it
staff,
helps. Yeah. Yeah.
and I will do what I can, and to the extent that we can find someone on HP who also is kind of willing to take this, then
Yeah.
I think that would be useful. Great. And yeah, I agree with, we're not on trial. No, we shouldn't be cross-examining them. And yeah, there's no opening and closing statements here. Awesome. Okay, so we'll definitely take that. Anything else? Amin, are you okay with all of this approach on the meeting?
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. I think that makes sense.
Great.
It'll help. I think it'll help contextualize some of the comments to have it closer. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another good reason to keep it, the other reason to keep it the order it's in is because the audit thing will come up sort of shortly after, it's even easier to kind of cross-reference it. And I think, to your point, like, let's let the other things that we are high-level strategic issues kind of get aired out. Great. Awesome. Well, thank you for all the thoughtfulness on this, though. Anything else that you need from us on the front for
Yeah,
next meeting?
one thing, and I forgot to tell this to the two of you earlier. We're having a roundtable on Wednesday. I'm going to forward you the invite. It's we at the last minute, or I should say, when we sent it out like a couple weeks ago, we decided we're going to open up San Francisco and LA office. So we're at like capacity, which is great for the programs. I actually didn't. I said to Selena, I thought maybe 2 or 3 programs would come because, you know, but then we had a full room. It's not big. We didn't get a big room for it. I think it's like
Great.
25, but some programs are coming, but I'll send it to you all again. I know it's short notice. I should have sent it to you all weeks ago. If you want to drop by, I mean, like there's the LA office will be open, and Erica, the San Francisco office will be open too. We're talking, I'm giving them a preview IOLTA distribution. We're talking about fee scaling. There's a lot of things we're talking about. Lower referral service stuff that we're doing, diversity report card, pro bono reporting. I mean, there's just so many. It's very meaty, meaty reporting meeting. It'll be fun. But I'll send
That's
it to you
great.
again. No pressure. We're actually
what
planning
time
on
is it
having
at?
a lot more of those things, so there'll be more opportunities. Selena?
Oh, Amin asked a question.
I'll get the information. I was
Yeah,
just asking what time it's going to be.
It's next Wednesday from, sorry, I should know this off the top of my head. It's
2 to 3:30?
yes, 2 to 3:30.
Oh, great. Okay. I'll put it on my calendar.
And if you
Yeah,
can't
I
join
don't
in
know.
person, you can also Zoom. There's a Zoom option. So
I was going to say, if there's
Mhm.
Zoom, I will
yeah,
definitely Zoom
there's a
in
Zoom.
and at least
And the
say
majority
a
of people are
hello.
coming Zoom. Yeah.
Okay. I will definitely Zoom in and at least
Great.
say hello and do an introduction.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you. Helena, what's up?
I wanted to share about the IALTA revenue piece. We had the California Access to Justice Commission had our funding committee meeting yesterday. I guess I'm a co-chair, and Dwan usually goes, but she was unable to go, so I reported for Dwan. So I wanted to report back because I think it's relevant to y'all's discussion at the next commission meeting. I raised what the very, very loose parameters of what might be available for distribution, with all the caveats that it's a trust fund commission's decision. But what I heard back from programs, and some of them do intend to come to the Trust Fund Commission meeting, is that because they struggled so much to spend all the one-time funds and to hire, they raised salaries significantly because of recruitment retention challenges. Everyone on the call said that they're now facing deficits in the near future because they're locked into salary increases. And they all felt that having a higher IALTA distribution as they kind of restructure, right size, whatever they're talking about for their own organization, is especially helpful. And they all thought that they all appreciated very much the 4-year spend down as being a way that they can prudently spend the funds. So I just wanted to share that back out, is that everyone thought that the IALTA revenue being so high is very timely because we're not getting an HP5, we're not getting any new one-time funding, and this will actually help organizations figure out what services do they want to continue to provide. And the union organizations are just like, yeah, we can't reduce salaries. Like we can't do the things that other organizations did in the last Great Recession, where I mean, some of you may remember, IALTA organizations did forced no Fridays, like cut in pay,
That's
forced
so
furloughs.
terrible.
It was bad.
Yeah. No, it's coming at a much needed time. So I think it's unfortunate, like the other stuff it's too bad, like, like this is gonna end up being just a shortfall for a lot of other funding cuts. And the other thing is, I think, isn't One Justice, Selena, doing like somewhat consultations with programs around like how to spend and like strategies and stuff like that?
Yeah, we're kind of figuring out, we see there's a huge need, and LAC and One Justice work together all the time. I used to work at One Justice, so did Juan.
Mhm.
And so we work together really well, and we've been trying to figure out like what are the knowledge pieces that either LAC can convene people together to share with each other, and what are the knowledge pieces that One Justice has templates and tools and can do an actual thing. So we are going to do a panel for executive directors who have faced a fiscal cliff before, how they manage that. And we are getting a ton of interest from new ADs of like, how do you manage a fiscal cliff with like multi-budget year planning? And then One Justice is probably going to do some additional consulting around that with specific tools that people can use.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah.
I mean, I just want an Excel spreadsheet. I want someone to
Yeah,
say, here's something you can use with all sorts of
yeah.
variables built in that you can consider what fiscal cliffs would look like.
Yeah, no, it's hard. What I'm having the staff do for the roundtable next week is like doing a graph that's kind of like the HP, like so they can see the layering on, because we all know there's like layer ons, but I don't think we can all keep it straight in our head. So try to do something visual to say that, last year is 95 million, but stretches 3 years, and now we're going to do another 225 million, and then next year potentially another 150, and layer it on to see the overlapping. And again, I think the good thing about the commission being so flexible, because with 110 programs, potentially 119 programs that will be approved, there's not a one size fit all. And so some programs are going to be able to spend it in a year or two, and a lot of programs are not. So having that flexibility is really great.
And I track all of the new executive directors in our community, and I have never seen anything like this as long as I've been at LAC. This is like, I mean, our support centers, half of the support centers have new executive directors.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That doesn't happen because support centers are like the older folks.
Yeah.
And so this is just, to me, we're losing some institutional knowledge of organizations that have navigated different budget climates, and some of the newer folks have no idea how to navigate
No,
this.
there is definitely a lack of sophistication. I have to say, even some big programs, I was surprised by like again, I don't know how to say it, lack of sophistication in budgeting for multi-million-dollar organizations, kind of a thing. So there's definitely a loss with like the change. I mean, there always is, right? And that's not to say programs shouldn't have like new blood and people have to retire and leave and stuff like that. But I think it's hard as a community. And the other thing is we got 9 new applicants. So in the span, if they all like qualify, I mean, that will be close to 20 new grantees in 2 years, which is a huge surge for the community. And then, usually new grantees have more needs for technical assistance. And so it is really quite the ramp up of work with the new grantees.
And a lot of interim EDs. I'm just looking at the list. We have so many interim EDs right now.
Yeah.
So that was it.
Well, I think that's great. I appreciate them, any organization that can come and kind of share what their view is on it, I think would be really helpful. And yeah, they extend my thanks in advance to them for coming and like sharing with us their view on it. And yeah, I think, do we know, Dwan, do we have to also approve like the number of years spent down in the meeting
Yeah, we do.
too?
And we're going to recommend
Okay.
4 years in the
Okay.
staff recommendation, just because it's so large. I actually think about maybe 5 years, but 5 feels really long because of the staggering. And we did 4, so 4 seems 4 seems reasonable. 5 seems just really far out.
Yeah. I mean, the thing we could do too is we could do 4, but then in 4 year, you know what I mean? Like if things look like they're really struggling, but then also anyone who can't spend it down, the money comes back, we redistribute it, right? Which isn't exactly the worst thing either.
No.
Especially if interest rates have come down significantly in 4 years' time.
Yeah.
you know, whatever can't get spent
Yeah.
comes back and we'll make sure it gets spent.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else for prep? Okay. Great. So Dwan, we look forward to share if you can share with us like the various, you know, meetings and you think would be
Yeah,
useful
I just
for
sent you
me
guys
and
both
or
the
Louise
calendar
to
invite,
attend.
and I'll try to find the
Great.
like with the information, like, you know, and to forward to you. But you have it on your calendar now. I just forwarded it to you.
Perfect.
Okay.
And yeah. And I mean, if there's ones that you want to do and can't, like, no, we'll try to coordinate, or maybe we can both be there. We just won't talk anything substantive. But I'll defer to you guys on that. But thank you
Sounds
all.
good.
This was a great
Thank you,
meeting.
guys.
Good
Yeah,
meeting.
appreciate
Thank
the
you.
really good conversation.
Okay, take
Take care,
care.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a
Everybody.
good one.